All right, guys, today we're going to look at modeling percents. Kind of introduced it each day a little bit, so we're going to focus on looking at what we say a model, percent model, with a 100 square group. But then I'm also going to throw in some bar diagrams. And then we're going to be able to know what percent it is, what decimal it is, what fraction. Whatever order works for you, as long as you convert them correctly, it does not matter to me. Okay, where's the buttons? Apparently that button went away. So remember, percent is out of 100. We talked about percent is always out of 100. So again, 50% would be 50 out of 100, which is 50 hundredths. But you also could like cross off that 0, which makes 5/10, which is equal to a half. So all of these are kind of the things that we've been mentioning, like percent is out of 100. So how can you model a percent? Well, if you look here, it says Jackie is using 1-inch tiles to make this mosaic. She needs 100 tiles. So here's 100 tiles. So I'm telling you there's 100 here. What percent of the tiles are green? So we need to just look at the green. So yes, this is a 10 by 10. So that means there is 100 in there. So the fraction is going to be something out of 100. Then we just got to count the greens. Now it's 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. So 36 out of 100 shaded in. So what percent's that? Well, percent's out of 100, right? So it'd be 36%. And then how do you say 36 hundredths is how you're going to write it as a decimal? So it'd be 0.36. Now, you also need to make sure that it is simplified. So this I could cut in half. I could cut this in half. But then I could cut it in half again, 25 and 9. And then how did I get to this conclusion of 36 hundredths, like 0.36? You could also divide this. You have options to get here. If you know what 36 hundredths looks like as a decimal, then you write it. So this is the answer simplified as a fraction. So that means for every 9 green tiles I see, there is 25 that are basically there in total. Then another 9 and make out of 25, then another 9 out of 25. So again, that is basically comparing green to the total, so a part to the whole. Okay. Oops. All right, so remember percent is out of 100, so this is a 10 by 10 grid. Again, both of these are like that. You could start wherever you want. So let's go ahead and start with a fraction. Fraction's always easiest. So I have 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I have 25 shaded in out of 100. So that means 25 out of 100 are shaded in. What percent is that? Percent is out of 100, so that'd be 25%. And then how do I write 25 hundredths as a decimal? It would be 0.25. Now, you could simplify this. You'll eventually get a quarter, 1/4. Doesn't that make sense to what I talked about yesterday? It's 0.25. So if you got one question right on a test out of 4, you have a 25%. You have an F. So could you divide this here? Absolutely. Could you divide this one over here? Absolutely. You will get 0.25. And that's how you say 25 hundredths. Same thing here. I got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 61. So I have 61 shaded in out of 100. 61 is prime, by the way. So what percent is it? 61%. And then if you see a pattern here, how do I write 61% as a decimal? Well, I know what 61 hundredths looks like. It'd be 0.61. If you're not comfortable in that, again, you put your numerator in house, denominator on the outside. Doesn't work, doesn't work. Add a decimal, raise it up. Add a 0, that would be 6, which is 600. That gives you 10, and then add a 0, bring it down, and that's 1. Same answer. So if you're not sure if you're making it into a decimal correctly, you could divide like I showed you yesterday. All right. Now, this is is a little different. So those ones are pretty easy, okay? These ones are just slightly a step higher. So I got a bar diagram here, okay? Imagine that this whole thing, because I'm representing this here as a whole. The whole thing would be what percent? Well, it's all of it. So that would be all of this together would be 100%. Now, what percent is each of those worth? So if I have 100% and I have 10 sections, what is each percent? Or what is each box representing? Well, if you said, oh, this is 10%, Mrs. Edwards, and this is 10%, because 100 divided into 10 sections gives me 10% of each, you would be correct. So each is worth 10%. Is that going to be the case for every single problem? No, it just depends on how many boxes you have. So what percent is actually shaded in? I have 10%, 20%, 30%, and 40%. So 40% is shaded in. Now, if I asked you to write it as a fraction, you already have it as a fraction. How many boxes are shaded in? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes shaded in out of how many total? 4 out of 10, which is 2/5. Okay, so you could also start, if you want to start it as a fraction and make it into a percent, by all means go for it. Now, how do I write 40% as a decimal? Well, I know how to write 4/10 as a decimal. 4/10 is 0.4, or I could divide 2 and 5, or I could divide 4 and 10 that way. Still gonna get 4/10. Now, kids ask me, can I write it like this, like with this, with a 0 on the back? Yeah, it's the same answer. So either 4/10 or 40/100 is still 40%. You just had to have a 0 there. Okay, now let's do the same kind of concept here. Now I'm telling you there's 20 sections here. So all the way from here to here, it has to add up to 100%. Now, just like here, if I have 10 sections, each was worth 10, how many would be in each section here if I have 20? Well, 100 cut into 20 sections gives me 5% in each box. Each is worth 5%. So this would be 5%, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. So 70% is shaded in. By the way, that should seem pretty reasonable. So 70% is shaded in. Here's why I know it's reasonable. Because halfway would be, I don't know, somewhere around 10. Right there. Would be right about there. Isn't that more than half, more than 50%? Yeah. And look at this one. This one right here would be right here. That's where 50% would be, so it's less than 50%. So that's how you could tell, oh, I'm doing right, or I'm not in the right answer there. Okay, so how do you write 70% out as a fraction? Well, if you look at this case here, 70%, how do we say that? 70% is out of 100. You can cross out the zeros and you can have 7/10. But in our picture, if you actually look at our picture here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 shaded in out of 20, and you should be going, oh, yeah, I know those are equivalent because they're proportional. They have a relationship. Okay? If I multiply 7 times 2, I get 14, and if I do 10 times 2, I get 20. So, but the final answer as a fraction, you should have the simplified one. And then how do I write 7/10 or 70/100 as a decimal? 0.7 or 0.70. I don't care, either one of those, you're not going to lose a point. Okay? Now, this one, here's half, right? Using common sense, my answer is going to be less than 50%. Okay? I have 4 sections now. Well, if the whole thing's 100 and I have 4 sections, that means that each is going to represent 25%. So that means this is 25, 25, 25, and 25, like quarters, 25%. Well, what's shaded in? 25%. Guess that one kind of gave it away. you could say automatically, what is percent out of? Percent is out of 100. You could simplify it and you get 1/4, or you could just look at the picture and say, oh, there's 1 shaded out of 4, so there's 1/4. Okay, and then how do you write it as a decimal? Is how you, like, what does 25/100ths look like as a decimal? You can divide. You can know what I said yesterday. Hey, make sure you know what a 1/4 is. Make sure you know what 3/4 is. Okay, you should know that this is 0.25. Again, if you're not sure, you could do 1 divided by 4, or you can do 25 divided by 100. But guess what? We said it was going to be less than 50%, and there it was. It was less than 50%. So my strategy here is, you know the whole thing's 100. Figure out how many sections there are. You take 100 divided by those sections. That tells you what each section is worth. And then just figure out what the total amount is. Okay, so you should kind of see a pattern here. So how could we model 47%? If it's out of 100, that's a piece of cake, right? This would be 100, right? So I would just do, each of these are 1%, right? That's 1%, 100 times is 100%. So if I want to do 47%, you should say, Ms. Everett, you're going to shade in 47 of them. 10, 20, 30, oh, I don't know, 40, and then 1, 2, 3, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7. Does it have to be pretty and perfect? No. I have 47% shaded in there. Okay, remember, 47% is 47/100ths, which I can write as this. By the way, 47/100ths is simplified. Now, how do I shade in 35% here? Well, first you got to figure out what is each word. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 boxes, and the whole thing is 100, right? So 100 cut into 10 pieces gives me 10 in a piece. So this is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. Here's 50%. So my answer is going to be less than 50%. So I should be over on this side. I'm shading 35% though. Well, you know, you should realize, okay, this is 10. Then another 10 is 20. Another 10 is 30. But how do I shade in 5%? Well, what's half of 10? 5. So you just basically cut this bar in half, and there you go. That is exactly 35%. So this answer, you could write it as a fraction, 35/100ths. How do you write 35/100ths as a decimal? Like this. But remember, if it is a fraction and you can simplify, you should put it in the simplest form. But we had this one earlier, a couple days ago. It's actually equal to 7/20ths. Right? 7/20ths. Divide by 5, divide by 5. So again, that's the answer in simplest form. By the way, you should see a relationship. You also could do that. All right. This one right here, same concept. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is 10. I have 20 here now. 10 and 10 20. So if the whole thing's 100, 100 cut into 20 sections gives me 5% in each section. So these are 5s. I'm going to get 15%. So 5, 10, 15. 15% is 15 out of 100. How do I say 15/100ths? Like that. How do I simplify it? Cut it into 5 pieces. Cut it into 5 pieces. You should get 3 out of 20. What did I shade in right here? 3 out of 20. Prove my point. Okay, it works. You should see a pattern. Last one is similar to the last question that we did, but this time I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need to figure out what each is worth. So the whole thing's 100. That means there's 20% in each of these. So here would be 50%, right? Like right in the middle. So I'm going to be more than that. So I'm going to be shaded beyond that line that I did. So this is 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. That adds up to 100%. So I want to shade it 80%. So 20, 40, 60, 80. Like we said, we should be over the line, over half. So that is 80 over 100. If I simplify it down, I get 8/10. If I simplify it more, how many did I shade in? Oh, Miss Edwards, you shaded in 4 out of 5. What was shaded in? 4 out of 5 sections. You should see that these are all proportional. There is a pattern between all of them. So how do I write 80/100 or 8/10? This is 80/100, which is exactly the same as 8/10, which if you divide 4 and put the 5 here, guess what you get? You also get 8/10. So it does not matter which form you have. Obviously, I want the simplified one, but that's showing you that there is relationships between these. These are all proportional. They all give you the same ratio. Okay? So I have some examples that I had the kids do in class, same kind of concept, converting from fraction to decimal, decimal to percent. But there is one on here that I wanted to go over. Let's see. Just this one right here, number 6. So number 6, there's always a misunderstanding about 8%. Okay, so this is 100, right? For number 6, I'm looking at this one. If I said shade in 8%, well, this is 100, so percent is out of 100, right? So this would be 8 out of 100 shaded in. So since I'm going to be organized, I'm going to shade in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, there's 800. So really, really, really small amount. Okay, what should I do? I should simplify it, right? So I could cut it into 4 pieces. So that gives me 2, because 2 times 4 is 8. And then what times 4 gives me 100? So that would be 25, 2 25ths. Okay, so how do I write this as a decimal? This is where kids make mistakes. How do you write 8/100? Some kids say this. Some kids say this. Some kids say this. Which one is the correct one? This is 8/10. No, I want 800. So guess what? It's not that one. This is here 80/100. Nope, Miss Edwards wanted 800, so it's not that one. This is how you write 8/10. Now, let's say you have no idea. I'm like, I want to make sure I get it right. What can you do? You could take your numerator and your denominator and then divide it. And you would get the same exact answer. It would be a 0. And then you got another 0. How many quarters make $2? That's 8. See how that's 0.08? Please be careful. That's the number one mistake, is kids think that 8% is like A or like C. No, the answer is B. So be very, very careful with a single digit percent. Very, very careful. Okay, same like with the 5%. 5% would be 5 out of 100, which is 1/20th. How do I write 500s? It's 0.05. Be careful again with that. Okay. Other than that, there's some other questions, same kind of concept going into here. This is one of the ones where it brings up something we talked about, like in the last presentation. To the nearest percent. So we're not going to be exact here. How do we determine the percent that is shaded in? Well, you have options. We do just like we did before, or we can start out with a fraction. We could do whatever we want to do. But I start out like kind of thinking this way. I see 2 shaded in out of how many totals? 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay. Now 2 7s. Well, I don't know what that is as a decimal. They said for me to be close, right, to the nearest percent. So I'm going to make it into a decimal, and then that'll tell me, hey, this is what each is worth. So it doesn't work. Add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. That gives you 2, which is 14. That gives you 6. Add a 0, bring it down. 7 times 8 is 56. 4, 40. 8 times something is 40. 7 times 5 is 35. 55. Add a 0, bring it down, and it looks like I'm going on for like ever. By the way, this one will eventually, believe it or not, will eventually repeat. It will. How do I know? Because 7, anything with a denominator of 7 will repeat. Anything with a denominator of 11 will repeat. Anything with a denominator of 3 or 6 will also repeat. So, anyways. So if I say to the nearest percent, so we're kind of going on here. Eventually we'll repeat at some point. I don't see a repeating yet, but that doesn't matter. It says S, like basically to the nearest percent. So right now I have 0.285 and then some random numbers behind there. But it says full nearest percent. So if I move it over 2 places, I have 28.5%, but they want a full percent, right? So what would you say that would be closer to? Is that closer to 28% or 29% based on your rounding rules? You should say 29 because the 5 tells the 8 what to do. So yes, I could have kept on going on this and going on forever. Now some kids go, well, Ms. Edwards, couldn't I take 100 because it's 100 divided into 7 sections, and couldn't I get my answer there to know what each of these are worth? Absolutely. So this is not going to be exact. Why? Because this is a repeating decimal. Just like I told you that some unique things about threes, right? You see how there's 2 shaded in out of 3? 2 shaded in out of 3, and I told you 3s will repeat, and they will. Put the numerator here, denominator here. Now this one you can see right off the bat. That's 6, which gives you 18. There's your 2, add a 0, that's 20. There it is, another 6, and so on and so forth. So this would be 0.6 repeating. So what percent would that be? Well, this continues on. 1, 2, so this would be 66.6 repeating percent, but the question says to round it to the nearest percent. So again, like I said before, is this closer to 66% or is this closer to 67%? Well, the 6 tells the 6 what to do. It says, hey, you, let's go up. So it's around 67%. Okay, so there is some of these problems that are pretty easy to find out. Again, here's another one doing the same thing, same method. I do want to show you though one of these. So if I look at this first one here, actually, I'm going to show you a way where we kind of like avoid the middle section, avoiding a decimal, which we're going to elaborate a little bit on further. I have 2 out of 10. So 2 out of 10, which is 1/5. I can do what it is out of 100. This percent is out of 100, right? Percent is out of 100 by doing a proportion. If you see a pattern, use it. We did these before. Could you cross multiply, divide? Absolutely. Doesn't matter. Either way, you're going to get the same result. So if you notice, this is times 20 and times 20. Guess what percent this is? It is 20%. That is also another way that you're going to establish tomorrow. So again, same concept here. This is 25. So I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 21, 22. So I have 22 out of 25 shaded in. Okay, can't simplify that one. So that's the fraction. If I ask you to do it as a decimal, you could divide, right? But maybe you want to go straight to a percent. So you do a proportion because percent's out of 100. Oh, I could cross multiply, divide. I know how to solve these. Or I can do a pattern. And this is a lot easier for some problems. So guess what? This answer is 88%. Doesn't it look like almost all of that shaded in? 88%? Yeah. So again, it's a matter of figuring out what works best for you. You're going to, maybe some of you want to go always to a decimal, but if I could avoid decimals by finding a pattern or setting up a proportion like we talked about in the last chapter, this is a proportion, then you can do that. You can use the trick, you can cross multiply, divide. Those things can happen. So again, you're using your old skills with your new skills. So I don't have this on here, but I always want to tell my kids this. I have a little tricks. The percents that the fractions that I think are very, very important to memorize, and I know I hate saying the word memorize, but very important. It's 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. It's your 1/3, 2/3, and it's your any number that's over 9. Okay? 1 out of 4. You should know that's 25 cents or a quarter. Half is 0.5 or 0.50. That's 5 tenths or 50 hundredths. Okay? 3/4. You should automatically think about money and go, ooh, 75 cents. That's what 75 cents looks like. Those ones are very, very vital, will help you a lot in maybe eliminating a step. Thirds are unique because they will repeat. These ones all repeat. These ones repeat here. These ones and these ones. I'm going to start with 9s. I want to see if you can see this here. If you divide 1 divided by 9, you actually get 0.1 repeating. You do 2 divided by 9, you get 0.2 repeating. Guess what you do when you do 3 divided by 9, or simplified as 1/3? Oh, you guessed it right. It's 0.3 repeating. So this one would be that. 4/9. Oh, yes, you are right. It would be 0 and 4 tenths, or the 4 repeats. And then 5/9 would be this. And 6/9, which is equal to 2/3, which would be this. These are the common ones that I feel like really will save you if you kind of start noticing things about them now. It will help you in the future. So that's like my little side step here. These are the ones I know. I knew these since I was your age. I started memorizing them. And some kids go, well, Miss Edwards, I remember what 1/5 was, because that's like 2 tenths. And I could do 2/5, because that's 4 tenths. And then therefore 3/5, if he knows the pattern, that'd be 6 tenths. And then 4/5 would be 8 tenths. Is it okay if I know those? Yeah. I'm just saying, like, you're going to start noticing patterns between the two. Okay? So go ahead and start today's classwork assignment. United States.